Hello and welcome to the Dark Mount video review for Transformers 4 Age of Extinction Leader Class Optimus Prime. Now this figure is different than the first edition, so if you're looking for a review on that, look somewhere else because I will never spend money on that thing. It's terrible. This thing's definitely also pretty simple. It's no ROTF Leader Prime. But it's a good toy, and I want to say that going in here, I'm not going to be bashing this toy, so if you're looking for that, also, probably should look elsewhere. One thing I will say though, I hate the Prime weapon butt thing. They need to figure out something else to do with weapon storage for Optimus figures. They did figure out storage underneath here, which is appreciated, but I'm tired of the just put it on the hitch thing. They really need to work on that, because it just looks bad. He is his new Western Star truck mode from the new film, which is rumored, expected, presumed to be his new mode after his evasion mode. So this is assumably the mode he will have for the majority of the movie. And I've got to admit, I really like it. It's definitely a little bit of a shell former. Nowhere near as badly as the first edition figure. That thing was barely even a transformer. But it's definitely a little bit better. And there's a mod that I've seen some people doing that I'm going to talk about a little bit later after we go through the robot mode. So you will see he has chrome on this footstep thing, as well as the tank, the entire smokestack, the windshield thing up here, and the entire front grille and front bumper area. So, I normally hate chrome. I'm normally really not a fan of chrome at all. It actually really works for me on this figure. It's in all the right places. It's where I would expect there to be shiny metal on a truck, and they pulled it off well. It's not like they were chroming the top here or chroming the wheel wells and stuff. So I mean, I have my complaints about chrome. I have my complaints about chrome on this figure and on Leader Class Grimlock, definitely more so. But I don't mind it, especially in the vehicle mode here. Full vehicle mode size comparison. Here he is with Voyager Class Galvatron. And you can see they scale pretty well together. I mean, this is a bigger truck, but this should definitely be a little bit bigger, just slightly. But you can see they're not too terribly off. Transformation here is pretty simple, as is to be expected. This entire Transformers 4 line is pretty simple. Even the figures from the Generations line that are supposedly geared more towards the older kids and the collectors, they're still pretty simple. They're kind of like Prime level simplicity. So you want to start by popping this whole thing off, and you can kind of swivel that forward and up, whatever, get it out of your way. Then you want to come in here, just disconnect these, and this little section might disconnect as well. They're just tabbed into a little hole with peg. Same thing on the other side. And then the chrome section here is on a separate hinge, and that will peel out. And you can kind of just fold these little flaps back to get them out of your way. And you'll end up with something that looks like this. Once you're done that, you can come under here and just disconnect these little side bits here, and you can fold this entire section up on a hinge now, and it will click into place like that. Once you're done that, you want to fold the legs out, and you can also kind of just fold the arms out here just to get them out of your way. On the legs, you want to split the truck cab in half, come over here, rotate this, sorry, do not rotate it, fold it upwards, then rotate it, and you will see there's a tab here and a little bar right here. The tab will seat right on this little seam, and the bar will run right up against this little notch, so it will keep this in place. Fold, rotate, then you want to come in here and rotate this entire leg section out and around like that. Fold the foot out, and rotate this around like that, and there you have the leg. Do the same thing on the other side. And there you have the legs formed. And I have seen several reviewers trying to rotate this waist around before transforming the legs, when all of the bulk of this stuff is up here. Bad idea. Obviously you're going to smash into this stuff all over the place and it's going to be no fun. So transform the legs before you try to rotate the waist, because the reasons. And you can fold your camera up so you can actually see what you're doing. You can fold this blue piece down here and straighten the arms out to your liking. And get them out of your way for now. Come in here, and those little tabs that I talked about earlier, just pop those out. And now this chrome piece right here, when in vehicle mode, sits at this setting, but it actually clicks in one further than that. You'll see it actually sits at an angle. This is where it sits for vehicle mode, and this is where it sits normally for robot mode. So after doing that, you can actually fold this all the way into the waist, and they form kind of a hip armor. And straighten the arms back out. Come up here, and with this section right here, what you want to do is split it apart like this and fold it forward so you can rotate them back around like that. I apologize, this figure is actually pretty tall. And then you can kind of fold these back around and have them as kind of shoulder armor. And then the final head reveal comes when you fold down the chest, and the head will pop up automatically. Some people have had issues with it rocketing skywards. I haven't had any problems with that at all, but I kind of wish I did because it sounds fun. And at any point after you fold this whole thing up, you can take these back wheels and they will collapse down into the backpack just to make that a little bit smaller. On the back here, the little sheath that the sword slides into is actually on a hinge. So that will pop out and then bend at an angle and fold back up so that his sword actually sits across his back at an angle, which is pretty neat. And you can take his shield, and for whatever reason there's only a port on one of his arms, so he can either hold it in his hand or plug it into just this arm. You can pull his sword out if you would like. And he has thumb articulation, which is kind of weird, and there's a little tab on this sword and a peg on his hand, which you can meet them up. And there you have Leader Class Prime in his robot mode. And I have to say, I actually really do like this figure a lot. He definitely has a huge backpack, which kind of sucks. These things right here come way too far down. It'd be really nice if they could kind of flip up or something. What can you do? I really love the legs. I think the leg transformation, while very simple, is incredibly fun and produces some really nice bot mode legs. They're very chunky. I'm a fan. I do like the paneling being used as armor, although I don't think it's used super effectively in the leg area here. It's not that bad, but it also is, they're pretty big. So I mean, there is just giant truck panels hanging off of his legs. It's kind of, there's no getting around that. His head is of a decent sculpt, although I have to be perfectly honest, I really love the Takara Tomy silver head that just has the two blue stripes and the blue crest up there, and has everything else kind of silver. I really like the way that looks. I don't think it's worth paying twice as much for the figure, because other than that, you're really only getting reversed color here, and the red down here has a little bit of like flame decal on it. Other than that, it's pretty much the exact same thing. Well, that's not true. All of this silver, gray, pearlescent plastic here is painted silver, so that's great. But I actually don't mind the gray plastic they're using for these figures. Kind of has like a silvery metallic sheen to it, so I don't totally mind it. I mean, it would be nice if everything was painted a nice silver, but it's Hasbro, they're toys for kids, they're sold for half the price that Takara is. That's never gonna happen. Let's just be realistic. This is a good figure. It could have been a much better figure. There is a mod that I have seen several people do now. A couple people in the Google Plus community, as well as I think on TFW or Cybertron.com, I'm not sure which. But there is a pin right here. I don't know if you can see that with my finger in the way. It is right there. And that is the pin that allows this entire section right here to swivel up and down. Apparently, you can push this pin out without harming the figure in any way. And it basically leaves you with the Prime figure as you see here, with no backpack. And apparently it is also fully transformable due to the way these parts clip into the side of Prime and the way that these hook around the front of the thing. So I very well might try that out. I haven't decided yet because I don't know if you can put the pin back in very easily, and if I end up not liking it, because it does take these pieces off, so you won't have those on the robot mode anymore. I don't know if I necessarily care about that, because they don't look super awesome, and if it is fully transformable as it appears to be, I've seen pictures and talked to some people, I really very well might do that, because I think this would be a much better figure if he didn't have this gigantic backpack on him, and I really might just keep that around for vehicle mode transportation and use it as kind of like a trailer G1 reference, with having that be some kind of weapons deck or something, I don't know. But I will let you guys know. I'll do some kind of an update video if I do end up doing that and let you know how it goes. Because I'm very curious to see. I really do like this figure already, and that might make me like it even more. So I'm probably going to try that out at some point. It seems simple enough. For Articulation, his head is on a ball joint, but it does kind of smash into these collar pieces, so you don't get that much rotation out of it. And it also goes up and down for transformation. These little things are pretty well articulated. They can go all over the place. You have the transformation joint on the arm, and ratcheted shoulders, ratcheted inward and outward swivel movement, above the elbow swivel, ratcheted elbow, and ratchets are like the name of the game on these figures. Everything is ratcheted. It's insane. And then that weirdo thumb articulation that I mentioned before. I don't know what that's about. That's just strange. You have leg articulation. You can move the skirt, and you have to move all of these car panel parts. But you do get a decent amount of articulation in the hip there. Get a knee bend, which is actually a pretty decent knee bend. Above the knee swivel. And then you actually have a decent range of movement in the foot down here. If you rotate these around like this, you can actually utilize the transformation joint as kind of a tilt, but I think that's ugly, so I don't do that. And then you have the foot movement here. So, for a size comparison here, he is next to the Revenge of the Fallen / Dark of the Moon Leader Prime. And you can see he's definitely a little bit smaller, just in terms of general mass and height. He clearly is just not made of as much plastic. And he obviously does not have anywhere near as high of a parts count. So, I mean, he's definitely much simpler. I don't think anyone's denying that at this point. But he's nowhere near the level of simplicity as, say, the first edition or any of the Robots in Disguise movie figures. I mean, those are all, like, insanely simple. So, well, first off, here he also is with the movie Galvatron. So you can check that out. And again, apologize, all these guys are pretty big, so they're busting out of my review space here. My thoughts on this figure are twofold. Part of them are about the figure itself, and part of them are about people's reaction to these figures. And I have to be perfectly honest. I think people in the Transformers fandom, especially about the movie Generations figures, are being a little bit ridiculous. If you look all the way back to G1, those toys were incredibly simple, as were G2, as were the Beast Wars figures. The Beast Wars figures that were more complicated were not released in America. Most of them were from the Japanese Beast Wars II and Beast Wars Neo lines, and they did not come over here. And the figures that were given releases in the US that were a little more complicated were generally the figures that people did not like and complained about a lot. And then after Beast Wars, we moved into the car robots / Robots in Disguise line that had a lot of reuses of older molds, which were very simple, and it had a couple of molds of its own, which were very complicated, and again, people complained about them. And they are a very acquired taste. Even now, a lot of people will say that they do not like the Robots in Disguise / car robots molds, like the Autobot Brothers or the JRX Train Combiner. And a lot of them say it's because they're complicated and fiddly. The Unicron trilogy figures were also very simple. The animated figures were a little bit more complicated, but still very simple. Prime figures were simple. We only started getting complicated Transformers when the movie figures came out. And there was a little bit more of that puzzle play type, spend 20 minutes figuring out where this single part goes. And granted, a lot of people enjoy that. A lot of people do, myself included. I love puzzles in general. So the more complicated you can make these things, the happier I'm going to be as a collector and as a puzzle. Most people don't If you, and I think Balt Matrix or Optimus or someone talked about this recently, you don't see kids running around toy stores with puzzles. You just don't. It is not something that is popular now with young children. It's just not. And even moving up into older high school aged kids, they're first off not going to be buying action figures. Maybe middle schoolers, maybe, if they are collecting, but most of them are going to be too self-conscious and too worried about social norms and stuff to be buying figures, and they're going to do what a lot of us did and stop collecting until they're older. So we're in a situation where a very small amount of us want this. We want this with every single figure. We want to have a 20-minute long transformation that you need a PhD to figure out, and some of us love this. I love this. I love the masterpiece figures. I love the more complicated movie figures. They're awesome. They're fun. Most people hate them. Most people don't play with them. And the target audience for these things, children, don't play with the things. So I guess the long and short of it, I'm not necessarily happy that they're simplifying. I personally would like to see in the future more difficult, especially for the collector-oriented lines, I would like to see a little bit more difficulty. But I'm not upset by this. I think it pulls off the character design well. I would have really liked to see them do something with this backpack. That's just too big. These should at the very least fold up or something. They could have folded up to cover these wheels. I'm guessing they just wanted to keep the parts count low. And I've got to be honest, guys, I would rather see them do this than stop manufacturing figures, or only make 4 or 5 a year. And I mean, granted, that's the alternative. If you look at companies like third-party companies that are making more complicated, more intricate figures, they're not churning out 7, 8, 9 figures a wave in multiple size classes. They're doing one. And granted, they're much smaller operations, but there is a lot of engineering time and research and development time and prototyping time that goes into making something like the ROTF Prime. And it's not necessarily reasonable for the small percentage of us that enjoy that kind of puzzle play to expect that Hasbro would design their entire business around that and cater to, frankly, a group of people who aren't big enough to support their business. And that's really just what we're faced with. So I see this as a happy middle ground. This thing is not as simple as it could have been. The first edition proves that. The RID one-step changers and power battlers and stomp and changers and all those prove that this could have been a much more simplified figure, and frankly, they didn't even have to make this generation's line. They might be taking a gamble on this line and thinking that most of their income is going to come from the RID stuff. We don't really know as consumers, so what this says to me is that they are aiming to seek a middle ground where they can include stuff like these awesome leg transformations to kind of tickle the fancy of the puzzle play people who really enjoy stuff like ROTF Prime, without making it so blindingly complicated that kids want to throw it against a wall, which, for the longevity and future of the business and the franchise that we all love and collect, is a good thing. So, do I like this figure? Absolutely. I wish he had the Takara paint job on the head. I'm not so concerned with the gray plastic. I know I bought Hasbro, so I knew what I was getting into. I would have liked to see the silver paint on the head. I just think that looks really stellar. Would have liked to see them do something about the backpack. And I would have liked to see it be in scale with ROTF Prime. That is an established leader class size. I'm not so keen on the downsizing in the movieverse, because that's going to make scale just obnoxious. And pretty much means that the scale difference plus the aesthetic difference is going to mean that the 2 movie trilogies are going to have to be separate on my shelves, which is kind of I wouldn't say a knock against them, but it's a little annoying. I would rather just combine them all, but whatever. That's yet another collector gripe that a majority of people who are buying this figure aren't going to care about. So I recommend this. If you hate the simplified figures, obviously I don't recommend this, because you're not going to like them. But if you know what this is, and you can appreciate a toy for a toy, and also appreciate that it definitely is extending an olive branch to the collectors by saying, hey, this might still be a little complicated for most kids, but we're making it anyway, I like what that says. And I think that says that the collectors out there and the people who do like the puzzle play, we're still going to get stuff from the Masterpiece line. There's probably still going to be more complicated Generations figures. I think it's a good thing, and I think this figure is a good thing. I think it could have been better, but better could also mean more complicated and less enjoyment from the main people who are meant to buy this toy, who are the kids. So, I've gone on about that for quite long enough, but that should take care of it in any future Age of Extinction figure, since I'm sure it's going to be coming up over and over again. But the long and short of it is, I think this is a good figure. It's not ROTF Prime 2.0, and if that's what you're looking for, you will be disappointed. But it's a good figure, and I think if you give it a chance, you might enjoy it. And I will get back to you guys on that mod if I end up doing it. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time for, I don't know, maybe Galvatron or something. Peace.